afternoon and welcome along to Pet You Didn't Know That. I'm your host Matt Ward and this is a new exciting pet programme where each week we'll have a look at how you can look after your pets at home. Coming up on today's show, we'll be looking at man's best friend. We've got some experts in the studio who will be sharing their top tips on looking after your pet. You've also been sending in your funny pet videos and pictures of your pooches. Some of them are just barking mad. But let's get on with the show. So let's meet our first guest and resident vet, Jason Atherton. Hi Jason, how are you doing?
Hi Matt, how are you
Brilliant.
doing?
Thanks very much for coming in. Take a seat. So this week, people have been sending in their questions for yourself. So if you're ready, we'll pick your brains. So first question, when looking after your dog, is there any important advice you could give us?
I'll start with puppies,
Brilliant.
which is often the basis of where we start educating owners. And there's a few key points that I point out to them. The first thing is we do a health check, just check the puppy's healthy, check there's no congenital defects, and then we start discussing vaccinations. There's a huge problem at the moment with diseases like parvovirus, where a bit like the measles epidemic, people have stopped vaccinating their pets.
Yep.
And as the vaccination numbers decline, then clinical incidence of what is a very nasty disease, the incidence goes up massively, and so vaccination is very important, and that starts at sort of a puppy from about 7 to 8 weeks, and they get a couple of injections, if not 3 injections, and that helps prevent probably the main nasty infectious diseases of dogs. The second thing that I then discuss, health prevention, following on from the vaccinations. It's really important that people worm their puppies regularly, as frequently as every 2 weeks initially, and then eventually later on in life moving on to every 3 months the rest of the dog's life. And that's not only for their health prevention, but also for public hygiene reasons, to basically prevent zoonotic, which basically means people getting infected with worms, which at one extreme can cause blindness in young children if ingested. So.
Oh, wow. So you've just mentioned about the health tips. Is there anything that we need to worry about with certain breeds and certain size of dogs?
There's a big debate about this. Again, going back to the puppies, the first 14 weeks of a puppy's life are the socialisation period, and I think that's the key to moulding the dog you want it to be. I'm not very keen on people picking puppies up at sort of 4, 5, 6 weeks, because again, I think the mother has a big role to play in socialising the puppy, and therefore leads to less issues with aggression. Once the owner has got their new puppy at 8, 9 weeks, it's important that they socialise that puppy, and that needs to be both with people and also with other animals once they're vaccinated. And that window of opportunity at 14 weeks, it's a lot easier to have a dog behaving correctly, both with other dogs and with people. And I spend quite a lot of time discussing that with pet owners. Other do's and don'ts, I encourage people to feed the dog after they've eaten. Again, it is less likely to have food aggression issues, and I'm a big fan of not letting dogs up on sofas. Again, in the case of small dogs, it puts the dog above child height potentially, and that can lead to obviously more likely to have bite injuries.
So as you mentioned just earlier on about the diets, are there certain foods that we should avoid feeding to dogs?
There's a lot of debate about this. I start them with puppies. They should be fed 4 meals a day. Often people think I eat twice a day or 3 times a day. The puppy's stomach is tiny, and therefore you can feed them too much. So it needs to be little meals and often. And as they grow up, you obviously wean them on to probably 2 meals a day. And there are specific breed diets as well. For example, large breed dogs need an entirely different diet to, say, a Chihuahua. And so there are large breed diets out there specifically for those breeds. And I've had several instances where people have bought something like a Dog de Bordeaux, a big French Mastiff,
Okay.
and they get to what they think is adult weight and switch them onto adult food, and that has led to massive joint problems. Basically, they grow too quickly on the incorrect diet,
Yeah.
and then they get cartilage problems, which can lead to lifelong problems and potentially surgery. So food is crucial.
So does it depend on age, or is it just kind of to discuss with yourself?
There's several factors. Normally, most food manufacturers suggest 12 to 18 months to feed puppy food,
Okay.
and then you go on to an adult food, and then there are now senior diets out there for dogs sort of 8 and plus, which are inherently lower in calories because the dog's less active, and generally lower in protein, which again has less strain on the kidneys, potentially.
Brilliant. And we've had a question from Sophie in Basingstoke. She has a white dog, and she says, in the summertime, should I put sun cream on it?
It's quite a good question, that.
Yeah.
We have quite a large instance, mainly in white cats, but probably the same still applies to dogs, of skin cancer. So the ear extremities, it's not unregular. It regularly occurs that we have to find a tumour on the ear tip of a white cat,
Okay.
and we have to remove the ear tip to prevent the cancer spreading further.
Yeah.
And there are now specific dog sprays and creams to apply. I think there's one called Petkin,
Okay.
which is probably the most commonly marketable product. So yes.
Brilliant. That's perfect. And we'll get that information up on the website later on at the end of the show about sun cream for your dogs. And I live a busy lifestyle, so when is the right time to have a dog?
I think there are several issues. First of all, even as a vet, I waited until I could afford to own a dog, and I think
Okay.
it's a big commitment, both financially and time-wise. And I think you have too many people rush out and go and get the cutest puppy they can find, and then discover that it's more than they can cope with. I think probably the worst example was I once was involved in rehoming 4 6-month-old puppies from a house. The
Okay.
gentleman had bought 2 Labradors, a German Shepherd and a Rottweiler,
Yeah.
and then I think they got to 6 months, which is almost like having a teenager in the house,
Okay.
and he had 4 teenagers in the house, and couldn't cope.
Yeah.
So that's first, is think about it first. I'm a big fan of pointing people in the direction of rescue centres. I think there's far too many dogs being bred unnecessarily,
Yeah.
and I think there's so many dogs out there in rescues that need a home. Going back to the finances, what you've got to remember is, first of all, when you're taking on a dog, you've got to feed it,
Okay.
and that has cost implications. Again, think about the size of dog. It's a lot easier to feed a small terrier than feed a Great Dane. The food bill's substantial, and leading on to the second potential cost, veterinary costs. If you can afford insurance, I think that's a good thing to at least visit.
Yeah.
But secondly, it gives you some sort of shock absorber against costs if you've got a good level of cover.
Because what would you say is the average kind of healthcare bill for a dog?
I think that I saw an article not that long ago. I think it's sort of £300 to £500 a year.
Okay.
It certainly adds up.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Again, it depends on size of pet as well.
Okay.
If you're putting a course of antibiotics out for a Great Dane, the bill can be substantial. So these all have to be considered, and then you make your decision.
Brilliant. And our final question: is it safe for owners to cut their own dog's nails?
Yeah, yes, it certainly is. I'm more than happy for people to bring dogs into the practice and show them how to do it properly. Their nail is not dissimilar to our nail in that basically you don't want to be cutting into the pink bit, what people commonly call the quick.
Yeah.
And probably the best thing to do is when you take your dog in for its puppy injections, or you take it in for its booster vaccinations, is you ask the vet. But it is something that a pet owner could certainly do, and I'm more than happy to show them. But essentially, if in doubt, ask. But it's not difficult.
That's brilliant. Perfect. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Jason, for
No
coming
problem.
in today. And I hope that's helped you at home. And if you have any more questions, then please do send them in, and we'll see if we can get them answered for you. I'm here with Dale and his lovely pooch, Sandy. Dale's had Sandy since she was a 12-week-old puppy. Dale, as a puppy, was she well behaved?
She wasn't badly behaved because she stayed with the breeder for a little bit longer than what puppies normally would.
So did that mean that she was more used to being in a new environment at your home?
But she was living in the breeder's home with our mum, as I said, so when she came straight to ours, she already knew she had to go outside, go to the toilet.
Okay. And so is she now well behaved as an adult?
She's really well behaved, actually, yeah. She has her moments, but then she remembers.
And does she like being taken out for walks?
She loves it.
Does she? And how many times does she go out for a walk?
She gets 3 walks a day, and she comes with me for a run for once a day as well.
Oh, wow. Well, I hope she does love it then. And does she get on well with other dogs?
She loves making new friends. She's got a boyfriend.
Oh, a little bit of a romance going on.
Oh, a little bit.
And can she do any tricks?
She can. Sandy, sit.
And what trick's this?
This is no. This is just no.
Is this the play dead trick?
Right. No. No. She's not playing games today.
She's not. She doesn't want to. Maybe it's the studio. Maybe it's the heat of the lights. But thank you very much for coming in today, Dale. And it was a pleasure to meet Sandy. Coming up next, we have the adoption part of the show with our next guest, Sam, and his owner, Corin. But first, let's look at when I went to meet Laura and her lovely dog, Bella. Bella became part of the family after being adopted from a rescue centre. Let's see how I got on.
Bella is a Vanarama. She's 9 months old. We got her from a rescue centre nearby to keep our other Vanarama company when we went at home. We got her when she was about 7 months, so we haven't had her that long. Our other dog is like 2 to 3 years old. We don't really know when you adopt them because obviously you don't get them from the puppies. It was really good. We went in on a Saturday and I think we brought home on the Tuesday. It was really, really quick. You go in for an initial consultation without the dog. Then you meet the dog and everyone in your family has to go and meet them to make sure that there's no differences between family. And then because we already have a dog, we brought them in to meet on one day, and which was fine, so we brought her home a couple of days later. When we first got Bella, our other dog wasn't really sure. Bella was timid and Millie was a bit more boisterous. At the minute they get on really, really well. The more we can feed them together, sleep together, things like that, which is good. We chose to adopt Bella rather than to buy her as a puppy, just because our first dog we had as a puppy, which was great, and then our second dog we adopted just for the time and convenience, and we seen her advertised, and it was just more of a spur of the moment, not really a lot of thought. And then with Bella it worked really well with Millie, and it just felt it was nicer to take a dog away from a kennel than it was from a breeder. The adoption process was really, really good. It was really quick. There's initial consultation with everyone in the family. You meet the dog, and then we had to take our other dog to meet Bella just to make sure that they got on fine and everything was fine. So it was only about 3 or 4 days before we brought Bella home. It was lucky that she was only at a rescue centre nearby as well, which was good. Bella!
How cute was Bella there? Now we're joined by Corin and her lovely dog Sam, who was adopted from a rescue centre. Hi Corin, thank you very much for coming in and bringing Sam in today.
No problem.
So how did you and Sam first meet?
He actually belonged to my boyfriend's family, and they couldn't cope with him when they had a new baby, so they put him up for grabs.
Okay.
So we did all the paperwork and claimed you, didn't we?
Brilliant. And what was the adoption process like then?
It's quite a tricky one. Collies are always difficult to get adopted because they have a tendency to nip and require quite a lot of attention.
As we can see.
So they won't let collies go to homes where there are young children or anything like that because, he can be quite rough. He doesn't mean to be, but he's kind of quite demands quite a lot of attention. So you've got to be careful that it was the right home, and that he was kind of behaving himself and would settle. He'd stayed with us a few times first as a kind of crossfade, and then we moved in, got his chip reassigned, and kind of got him registered to a vet and checked over. So I knew kind of a full medical history for him as well.
Brilliant. And was he quite settled when you brought him home?
Oh no, no. He's I'm actually his fourth owner.
Okay.
His first owner died. Then they tried to get him to work as a farm dog because he is actually a purebred collie. And then my ex's family got him. So it was kind of another new home, and it was a few kind of 5 or 6 months of mess and upset and barking and nipping. But we're getting there now, I think.
Brilliant. And so was it just him slowly adjusting to your house?
Yeah, I think it was a case of him adjusting to my house and me adjusting. He's the first male dog I've had. It's always been bitches I've had in the past. And collies have a lot of energy, and they need a lot of WALK time and a lot of attention. So it was kind of me getting used to what he needed. Lots of things would set him off. So people walking past the window, he'd go absolutely mental, barking, quite aggressive. He made a very good attempt at eating the postman one day.
Brilliant.
A bit of a jailbreak situation. So it was kind of me adjusting to what he needed. He's always had male kind of masters as well as an adult dog. So as a female, getting used to how I handle him, using my voice and my body language, and kind of him getting used to the fact that I wasn't going to leave like the others had.
Yeah.
He's still getting used to that one, I think.
Oh, that's good. And how old is Sam now?
I think he's about 8. I'm not sure. His collies have a pink mouth when they're born, and as they get older they turn black, and by the time they're 9 or 10 they have a completely black mouth. His is almost black now, so I'm assuming he's kind of 8 or 9.
And I've seen Sam around the studio, and his tongue hangs out a lot. So what's the story behind that?
Well, I think he was bred as a working collie, so they have an underbred jaw, so they can't actually bite the sheep.
Okay.
They just nip. They can't do any real damage. But I think he just has an unnaturally long tongue, and the two things combined do make for some sort of very comical viewing.
Yeah. Thank you to Corinne for bringing Sam in today. It was a pleasure to meet you both. Now, if you're thinking about getting a dog, why not visit your local animal shelter? If you head over to our website, the address is on the screen for you now, you'll find a list of all your local animal shelters in your area. You never know, you might find your new best friend. So now this is the time when we look at all your lovely pet pictures you've been sending in through our website and app. We've chosen some of our favourites, and they're absolutely brilliant pictures. Let's take a look at a few now. We have Hope, age 9, of her lovely pooch playing in the garden with her ball. We have Kieran, age 5, and her lovely dog Adam, lovely dog Adam. And we have Ruby, age 7, who's drawn a picture of Alfie, their dog, who looks like it's ready to eat the bone. And we have Samantha, age 6, with her dog Patch just running around in the garden. But my favourite one of the day has to be Maureen, age 7, with her dog Ralph, Mummy, and Alan all out in the garden. But they're absolutely great pictures, so please keep them coming in, and who knows, next week you might see them on the wall of lights. Now we'll be looking at all your pet videos you've been sending in about your dogs doing daft things, and here are some of the best ones. Make sure you look after your pet, and I'll see you next week for another exciting episode of Pet You Didn't Know That.